Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Little Modular. Today we will make friends with this little bugger, nasty, noisy, aggressive, and ooh, yeah, and super characterful module by SCHLAPPI Engineering called 100 Grid. And just like all the other SCHLAPPI Engineering modules, the angle grinder and interstellar radio, it's all about noise. Hundreds, thousands of different kinds of noises, grit, dirt, feedback, you name it. If you are into this kind of sonic exploration, then I would say that the SCHLAPPI engineering modules are for you. And this one is especially cool because it's really playable. As you see, it has those 8 brass touch points, which are wired internally to different points, and you can just simply touch it and you become the patch cable. You can also connect here some standard patch cables just by touching it with the tip. You can use alligator clips. This even sometimes picks up a radio station, particularly this right here, this brass point. If you're lucky enough, you could become a live antenna and pick up some radio stations. It's all about feedback patching. This module is also inspired by circuit bending, and it really does often sound like a circuit bend toy from hell. This module consists of 3 elements. It is a filter, vintage style transistor ladder filter. It is coupled with the VCA OTA type, and then it is also a distortion unit, which is based on a vintage headphone amplifier driven into instability. So the signal goes to the filter, then it goes to the VCA, and then at the final stage it goes to the distortion. And all of these are controllable from the front panel, but also most of the parameters are normal to different points in the circuit, and you can activate those different normalizations and those different modulations through those knobs. You can see each of the knobs has a parameter name, but also below it has some other name in parentheses. That's the name of the normal parameter. So if you don't have anything connected to the certain input down here, then it just works as a parameter for this alternative parameter. So if you don't want that to be used to affect the sound, you just do not use that parameter. Some of the parameters in the parentheses are not available otherwise, like for instance the Distortion 2, which is a second unstable distortion amplifier, which is comparing the VCA to the distortion out. We also have something called Pole 2, and this is just 12 dB output from the same filter. So in the center here we have the frequency knob. It works just like regular frequency knob on any other filter. Below we have a resonance knob, which does what it says. Below we have a CV knob, which controls the CV attenuation for the resonance knob. On the left we have input 1 and input 2 knobs, which control the input 1 and input 2 right here for the signals. Those are summed and then they go to the filter. Here we also have the control for FM1. On the right we have the gain knob, which has to be at least a tiny bit open in order for this to work and for you to hear any sound. It also acts as a distortion amount, especially above the 75% mark around here, around 3 o'clock. Below you have the CV attenuator for this knob. You can use both of these as a VCA, so if you turn that down and turn that up, the 8 brass points above, which I have already mentioned, we'll get back to them in a second. But here we have a really interesting 100 switch, which just engages extreme distortion, in case you like to go really overboard, that's where you switch the circuit to become really super aggressive. And you can have it momentarily like this, or you can just switch it permanently like this. Middle position switches that option off. Below we have the inputs, input 1, input 2, then we have inputs for FM1 and FM2, and as I mentioned before, we have the gain and resonance CV inputs, and also we have 2 audio outputs. This is the output before distortion, and this is after distortion. So if you want to use it as a filter or as a VCA without any extra oomph, you would just connect it in here. But if you want some nice distortion and some gnarly stuff, you just use the distortion. As for the touch points, we have some inputs and some outputs, and some of them are inputs outputs, and these are laid out in a really clever way. So an input is always next to the output, so it's really easy to connect them together, and you can just use your pinky or your thumbs or any combination of those. You can also use both of your hands, some cables and clips. Anything goes. It's all about improvisation and fun with this module. So let's just take a quick look at the brass points. This is the audio output of internal second distortion circuit. Next to it we have the gain CV. This is a CV input for VCA. So audio input can create some distortion or amplitude modulation effects, and this will be heard at both out and the distortion out. This is just a CV input for resonance. It might require some initial resonance to be heard. It's also heard at both of the outputs. So this is the distortion 2 amp pin. Both an input and output will only be heard if applied to an input, or the distortion 2 signal is being fed into audio elsewhere in the circuit, such as in 1. This one is similar to this one. It's just distortion 1 amp pin, so it will also only be heard if applied to an input or at the distortion out. This is a simple one, just the CV modulation for the frequency knob right there. So this is a gain CV, which is pretty much the same as on the left side. And the last one here is the distortion out. This is an output type, and it is just distortion output. Simple as that. To be honest, you really do not need to remember which one does what. Anyways, it's all about noise and about dynamically changing stuff and trying to find the golden moments. And you will find a lot of them with this without really knowing which of those goes where, because as I mentioned, they are really cleverly laid out. So whatever you touch, it just works and does something fantastically wicked. Let's try to construct a really simple patch for now without any input. I'll just use the distortion output. As I've said before, you need to turn up the gain here to hear anything. Adjust some maybe resonance right here. And then we can do that. Okay, and if you want, you can turn up some of these knobs, which will engage those parameters in parentheses. So the more you turn the gain knob, the more distortion you introduce. And then I can engage the 100th grid. This is extremely noisy. Even without anything patched in, as you can hear, we have this wonderful color noise box. But then we can apply, for instance, a simple envelope, like I have it here from my favorite Contour 1 envelope. So I just stick it into the gain here, and I turn down the gain and turn up the gain CV. And only by doing that, I can have, dozens, hundreds of gnarly basses or some crazy instruments or some crazy percussive sounds. I'm using the manual switch on the Contour 1, so this is a very nice combo. See? Contour 1 and 100 grit. Taking this stuff and sampling it, and you just, have this infinite palette of wicked samples, of wicked drum sounds, drones, basses, anything, even without connecting anything into those in jacks below. But let's connect something in here. So I'll turn down all the gain and CV, and let's patch in some simple VCO, my trusty IntelliGel Rubicon. And for this to work as a simple filter, we will use the output without distortion up here. Then I need to turn up the gain and turn down all of the other knobs. So here goes my Rubicon, and I can just use it as a simple vintage styled, vintage flavored filter, which sounds like that. Okay? But then I can add distortion to it. So now I have a filter and a distortion, and I can use both the input driving the filter and the gain driving the distortion post the VCA. And also, of course, the 100 knob to add even more grit to it. Oh yeah! I mean, alright. Well, if you ask me, that just sounds like a terrific TB303 kind of distortion. Let's try it that way. Oh my god. Seriously, that's the first time I had to take off my headphones. It's so aggressive, so bright, and so harsh. I can't think of any other module that does that. I'm thinking about the Metasonics RK3 Ringer Shaper, which does similar things, but in the tubey, gooey way. It has those razor blades in the sound. And let's not forget about the touch points. I can go on like that for hours. It's insane. It's really insane. Fantastic sonic mayhem generator. I really love it. But this is just the beginning. We still have many patch points down here which were not used. I can, for instance, apply a CV pitch modulation from my sequencer, which in my case would be the Seek sequencer, to the FM2. And as you can hear, it will roughly track the volt per octave standard. I can also use the resonance input with my LFO, and of course I need to adjust the CV attenuation for it. Okay, and I can also connect some second input to it. In my case, this will be the DPO, so a second input in here. Like so. And of course I can still use the gain for the VCA. Let's put the contour into the looping mode. A really neat way to introduce some more chaos is to use a second oscillator as an FM. Like so. But of course, instead of CV, I can also use audio source in here, like another oscillator, again, Rubicon. I'm patching this into the FM2. That's how it sounds without it, and that's... Woo! Yes! So again... And again, it's a fantastic source for some aggressive percussive sounds. If you're looking for any hi-hats, metallic stuff, just like with the Interstellar Radio or Angle Grinder, you can get all of them and more. Okay? There's one more application that I really love with 100 grit, and this is drums mangling. I have this really simple drum loop going on. That's how it sounds without any processing. Now let's see what happens if I push the gain. Okay, and it sounds like a broken walkie-talkie. I just can't stop doing it. Let's not forget about the 100. The FM. And of course, external FM right here. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, that's just plain bonkers. It's I'm speechless. That would be it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. So if you like that video, please like, please subscribe. I'll see you next time. Happy wiggling. Bye-bye.